What we're going to do is we're going to look at solving quadratics using the quadratic formula and the discriminant. The discriminant's not solving it, but it tells us how many solutions there are. Now, first, the quadratic formula. This is based off of a quadratic equation. With the quadratic equation, our a value is in front of the x squared, our b value is in front of the x, and the c value is by itself. This is only true if it's equal to 0. So the formula for the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So looking at our first example, our a value is 1 because that's in front of the x squared. Our b value is negative 2 and our c value is 8. So when we plug it in, we go x equals negative b is the opposite of b, so that would be 2 plus or minus the square root. We're going to do negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 8, all over 2 times 1. We're going to simplify this inside the square root. So we have the square root of 4 minus 32 all over 2. 4 minus 32 gives us negative 28. And what we have to do is we have to simplify negative 28. And we know that negative 28 is 4 and 7 and negative 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I. So what we have is 2i square root of 7. And we divide it by 2. So then when we divide each of them by 2, we get 1 plus or minus I square root of 7. Now looking at letter B, notice that it's not equal to 0. So first we bring over the 7. So we have 3x squared minus x minus 7 equals 0. So my a value is 3, b value is negative 1, and c value is negative 7. When we plug it in, x equals positive 1, because negative b would make the negative 1 a 1, plus or minus the square root. We would have negative 1 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 7. We divide the whole thing by 2 times 3. X equals 1 plus or minus the square root. 1 plus, because a negative and negative is a positive, 12 times 7 is 84. So we're going to divide that by 6. X equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 85. Now 85 doesn't simplify, so we're just going to keep that as our answer. Looking at letter C, notice that it's equal to 0. So we have our A being 5, our B being 2, and our C being 4. So we have x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 5 times 4, all over 2 times 5. X equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root. 4 minus 4 times 5 is 20, times 4 gives us 80, and we divide it by 10. We get negative 2 plus or minus the square root of negative 76 all over 10. And when we break down 76, we know that that would be 4 and 29 and negative 1. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of negative 1 is I. So what we have is x equals negative 2 plus or minus 2i, and then square root of 29. Oh, 19. And then we're dividing that by 10. So when we simplify this, we see that we have a 2 in common. And so our final answer is -1 plus or minus I square root of 19, not 29, all over 5. We're dividing each of them by 2. Now, the discriminant is what's inside the quadratic formula. So this right here is inside the square root. Now, why that's important is because if that value is less than 1, meaning it's a negative, then what we have are imaginary solutions. That was our example with C and our example with A. Both of those had imaginary numbers because inside of our square root was a negative. We had a -28 and we had a -76. So that gave us 2 imaginary solutions. When that value is equal to 0, it's 1 real. And when it's greater than 0, like letter B, then it's 2 real solutions. So here we're not solving it, we're just finding how many solutions. We're going to use the same A, B, and C. A is 1, B is -6, and C is 9. So we have -6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 9. That gives us 36 minus 36, which is 0. Now, when we get an answer of 0, that means we have 1 real solution. Now for letter B, our A is 4, our B is 8, and our C is 1. So we have 8 squared minus 4 times 4 times 1. That's 64 minus 16, which gives us 48. That right there is a positive, so that means that we have 2 real solutions. And our last one, this is not equal to 0, so we need to put it equal to 0. So 7x squared minus x plus 4 equals 0. A is 7, B is -1, C is 4. So we have -1 squared minus 4 times 7 times 4. That gives us 1 minus, and we're going to take 4 times 7, which is 28. And 28 times 4 gives us 112. When we subtract it, we get -111, which means that we have 2 imaginary solutions.